just going to read a few excerpts from a piece written by Peter Collins. He's a federal prisoner at Bath Institution. He's the recent recipient of an award from Human Rights Watch for his work that he's done in terms of promoting harm reduction inside prisons to prevent the spread of HIV and AIDS. And on this article, which is called "The Continuing Horror Story of Spiegelgrund: Mental Health, Compassion, Awareness, and Incarceration," he begins the piece by talking about Canada's involvement in LSD and psychoactive testing of prisoners, and then goes on into different examples of how CSC does not adequately deal with mental health. Talks about the Ashley Smith case, and basically one excerpt here, just to give you an idea of where Peter's coming from. He talks about how prison guards had seen Ashley alive with a ligature around her neck and walked away, and he says, clearly Canadian prisons are not the soft places that guards, the media, and political hacks claim. If you remain unconvinced, just visit young Ashley's grave and ask her. So what I'm going to do here is read an excerpt about a prisoner Peter has encountered. He's serving a life sentence, so he's met a lot of people over the years. He's still in prison, and one person he met while in prison goes by the name of WW. And anyways, let's see where this goes. His name is WW, and his conduct and crimes flow from inherited congenital mental defects that were exacerbated through traumatic childhood experiences in which he was the victim of sexual abuse from his primary caregiver, his father, who emotionally, physically, and sexually abused him. Coupled with mental illness, his horrific childhood, and the lack of community support, supervision, and protection, he did what many victims of sexual abuse do. He passed it on, and it involved the most vulnerable, children. While everyone recoils in horror, it would serve us well to remember that WW is damaged, and the violations he experienced as a child, along with his social isolation and psychological and physiological mental impediments, contributed to his inappropriate conduct. We need to consider this child trapped in a man's body. I agree that children need to be protected from WW, but WW apparently needs to be protected from us. Context is required. If we do not look beyond the immediate circumstances of the offense and acknowledge the whole picture, who will? WW presents in the mental age range of 8 to 12 years old, and is clearly operating with a diminished mental capacity. His general ability to understand social situations is skewed. He has personal boundary and appropriateness issues, which clearly contributed to his crimes and continues to drive a wedge between him and meaningful social contact. WW's problems are further compounded by health and hygiene difficulties. Prison guards at Warkworth Federal Prison encourage WW's antics by playfully writing up charges and then laughing with each other as he would feign outrage and rip up the charge sheet. While amusing for the guards, it also provided WW interaction in a non-threatening environment. However, the interaction also reinforced socially unacceptable behavior. Throwing fits was diffused and funny at Warkworth, but after his transfer to Bath Prison, the guards say they interpreted his conduct as threatening and unpredictable. It seems that WW also learned to mimic socially corrosive communication techniques from some of the prisoners and guards. When WW was not welcomed or bothered, someone he received rude and abrupt communication. "Get the fuck out of here. Beat it, you fucking goof." As eloquent as this appears on paper, in the prison context, it is very offensive and can even result in the loss of life. WW would mimic this without understanding the potential dangers inherent in these prison warnings and challenges, and his uttering them should not be held against him. However, this concept may be difficult to grasp if the prisoner who is being spoken to in this manner has no comprehension comprehensive appreciation of WW's limitations. In that situation, there could be an abrupt and permanent end to WW's story, as non-response or turning the other cheek to a challenge in prison can result in an escalation of violence. In WW's continuing effort to be accepted, he tries to shake everyone's hand, straining for acceptance and confirmation that he is safe. He talks endlessly and repetitively about anything, everything, and nothing. His effort to receive a human connection is something many of us experience daily and take for granted. Trapped in prison with a sentence that he does not fully understand, he lives in perpetual loneliness and fear. No peer, no equal, no friend. He seeks acceptance from most everyone, regardless of how barren and insincere it may be when it is offered. At best, he is patronized. At worst, ridiculed, harassed, and made uncomfortable. While there are generally accepted, if somewhat limited, methods of evaluating someone's intelligence and emotional quotient, this does not prevent WW from being sent from prison. Clearly, his IQ and EQ are of a diminished capacity. On the other hand, those who knowingly treated him so poorly obviously suffer emotional hindrances, which prevent them from finding them requires empathy, kindness, compassion, and understanding to be gentle with someone so frail and vulnerable. I have no doubt that those who conducted themselves in either fashion continue to have many justifications and explanations. The all too predictable result of hostilities directed at WW was that he sought and still seeks refuge with prison guards, which then resulted in accusations from and against some prisoners, correctly or not, that he was an informer. The guards would then threaten blanket sanctions against all the prisoners, guilty or not. Then the guards would simply return to whatever it is they do in their concrete towers, blissfully unaware that they have only aggravated the problem. As all of the various issues were bubbling to the forefront of prison life, guards and prison administrators have begun to complain that WW was too much to manage in Bath Institution. We tried nothing. Didn't that work? With the pity that accompanies the obliviousness, misguided and opportunistic, the label of informant was hung on WW, and this served the dual purpose of validating their anger and justifying the further ostracization of this mentally limited, vulnerable, and socially alienated individual. In reinforcing circles, some prisoners were telling each other, or anyone who would listen, that he's not really that mentally retarded. They would argue that he is dirty and does not shower, but they never considered that he's afraid to go in the shower because of hostility in the prison and due to his history of abuse. Several of the very same prisoners who would call WW an informant stand with the guards discussing all manner of issues. I have heard how reviled our self-appointed social champions are by WW's crime. I notice, however, that they do not harass, belittle, or intimidate other people with similar convictions at this prison. And the only difference I can see is that those individuals are not as weak, alone, or vulnerable, and therefore may be more capable of defending themselves. WW experienced many additional difficulties from being exposed to prison environments, guards, and some of the prisoners. While many prisoners and guards, for that matter, have empathy and compassion when it comes to the unrelenting limitations of someone with developmental hindrances, this is not always the case.